Some things I want to keep to myself, especially when it comes to my personal data online. I really don't want any hacker snooping on me, so I use NordVPN.
Sure if I told you that I think I may be being shadow banned by YouTube as well.
And yeah, you told me last time.
So I'm going to be slowly start uploading onto another platform, bittubers.com, a decentralized platform. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hi everybody, this is Crypto Rich, working with you to get rich with crypto, filling our pockets with crypto profits. I have with me Andreas Frink from Cajutel, and this is a bit of a surprise because Cajutel or Andreas are a bit like buses in England. There's a long gap between buses, and then when they come many at a time. You get 2 or 3 at a time. So there was a long period where Cajutel, where Andreas was not on my channel, and in the last month, I think this is the second time, because we have some rather exciting news if you're a Cajutel token holder, as I am. Now, before I introduce Andreas and we talk about this exciting news with Cajutel, I want to let you know that this is not investment advice. Do your own due diligence and do not invest any more than you can afford to lose. All I'm doing in this video and all my other videos is sharing with you what I'm discovering as I travel along on the blockchain. And good morning, Andreas.
Good morning.
Good morning indeed. Thank you so much for making yourself available. Do you want to say just a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about Cajutel, and then for those that are new to this project, and then we'll go into talking about the exciting news.
Sorry, I didn't get your last sentence.
Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself? Say a little bit.
Well, I'm Andreas Fink. I'm the CEO of Cajutel. I'm a telecommunication expert since 30 years. Write a lot of software as well. And I started the Cajutel project to actually bring high-speed internet to West Africa. And we have now started in the first country.
Very good, very good. No, wait a minute. You just said we've just started.
Well, we got the license.
You got the license. Okay. Now let me give a little bit more background. So you ICO'd in 2017. Towards the end of 2017, it was a small ICO, and the idea is that to build solar power internet towers in initially Guinea-Bissau, because Guinea-Bissau is a stable country with no high-speed internet, so people have to use their mobile phones, and the data is very expensive. And since you finished the ICO, you've been trying to get a license in Guinea-Bissau, and there have been all sorts of bureaucratic and administrative hurdles and staff changes. And you then started applying for a license in Guinea, and also I'm going to share my screen so people can see what part of the world we're talking about, and also in Sierra Leone. So there's Guinea-Bissau, there's Guinea, and there's Sierra Leone. And then your colleague, David Vine, the CTO, he has extensive experience working with telecommunications in this part of Africa, yes?
Yes, exactly. He has been big area, and he has been working with several governments in those countries.
Right. And you yourself have set up a couple of successful telecommunication companies in Switzerland and in Iceland. So you've got a track record, a successful track record. He's got a successful track record. And Cajutel takes your track records, puts it on the blockchain, and the idea being that the money raised, you'll use it to create a network of towers that will make high-speed internet affordable and available to people throughout the countries. And the token holders will receive a return on their investment on their tokens. Dividend payments.
That's the idea, yeah. So we use the token as a dividend payment mechanism, or like as an electronic version of a share.
Yes, very good, very good. Okay, and then do you want to say what is this good news that you want to share, and why is it good news? And then we'll start talking about that.
Okay, I mean, the original plan was to start with Guinea-Bissau, because that's the country where the internet connection is the worst. We faced some obstacles there from the regulatory. They're trying to push everything back, and we came to the conclusion that there's basically one guy who tried to block us, and he's probably paid by the competition. And the reason is that they're planning since many years to bring a fiber there, and but they're not there yet, and it's going to take time. So they want to push everything out so the competition can be there earlier.
Mm.
So the last thing there is that we had to supply some documents, and they wanted to have more technical details and more technical details and more technical details, which is totally irrelevant. And so we stopped this dance, and we moved up the chain. So we have now involved the Minister of Telecommunication. We even have somebody talked to the president itself, to bring this forward, because it's obviously not a fair game which they're playing. Now they had elections, and I just heard yesterday that they have now some new prime minister, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I have to check out my notes there. So the politics is going to change again, and then maybe it's going to go faster. But in the meantime, we looked at the extension of the project, which was originally planned for Guinea.
Yep.
And in Guinea, it's still a little bit delayed because they're just about to change the law, and they're not giving out any licenses. And then we got introduced to Sierra Leone as well, which has similar problems. And the whole region has similar problems. There it actually went very smooth. So I was there like in February. So we met the minister, and they were all very keen to have us on board. And we now finally got the license. So we are officially an ISP in Sierra Leone. So we're going to start with that part, because that's much easier if you have a license. Without a license, you cannot do anything. And so we're going to start building infrastructure there. So I'm going to fly there in a couple of weeks with a few other persons to actually scout out the right locations, find the right buildings, and start building this thing. So that's where we're at in Sierra Leone, and that's also an interesting market. It's a little bit easier for us because they're all speaking English there.
Right.
And we have a lot of people speaking English in our group. While in Guinea it's French, which I speak, but in Guinea-Bissau it's Portuguese, which I understand a little bit, but I'm not really able to speak it. So that makes things simpler. On the other hand, Guinea, in Sierra Leone, there's a little bit more competition. There's a couple of players there, and in the capital there's internet available, which is not that bad, but it's still very expensive. So we will do something different than to what the competition does by doing a much fine-grainer network, which means we have a lot of more cells, a lot of smaller cells instead of just big ones to cover the area, which means we have to invest more, but it pays off in the long run because we can connect more customers and we can provide much more capacity.
Right.
Because if you have one big cell for the whole city, you cover the whole city. But once you get 1 million customers on one cell, then the cell is totally clogged,
Right.
And then the speed would drop down. But if you have instead 1,000 cells, taking each 1,000th of the customer, then every of those customers has the full speed.
Right. Right. Now, okay. Now, is it going to be that sort of, let me see, that density of towers? How much will it cost? How long will it take to build?
Well, we haven't the exact amount of towers, but it depends on the locations and the geographical, how many people are in this area, how much bandwidth do you want to spread to those people, how is the topology. But like a good figure is to have like 200 customers for a sector.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have one base station, you can have like 3 or 6 sectors. So you can serve like, let's say you have 6 sectors times 250. So you have 1,500 customers you can serve with one base station. And I'm now talking about active customers, not just connected customers. And a usual figure is you have like one base station every 1 to 2 kilometers. So they have ranges of that. And in some dense cities, you might have base stations which only have a coverage of like 250 meters.
Right.
And if you go to New York City or so, then you scale that up by a number of floors, of course. They have crazy problems, I can tell you. So it's all a question of doing the math. And the competition, which I've seen, they cover Freetown, the main capital city, with like 3 towers. They put it high on the mountain so they can cover everybody. But once they really got a lot of customers, then they're not going to have the bandwidth anymore. So, and we prepare for that. So we do plan to build a lot of small cells. We connect them via fiber, preferably. So we have to lay fiber where we can, or we use microwaves in other places, and then build the first class network. And that's going to make people happy because the reception is going to be good because they're always close to the tower. It's going to use less power on the hand devices, so the battery is going to last longer because it doesn't have to transmit very far.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have more bandwidth, and it's going to be much more affordable than what others have.
Okay. And Andres, are you going to be building in Freetown first?
Well, the sea cable is landing there, so we have to connect to Freetown no matter what. We're going to build, of course, the core infrastructure in Freetown, where we have lots of buildings, where we have engineers and so on. Countryside as well, and cover the major cities, because those are suffering much more than the capital. So we have to sit down.
Andres, hold on a second. I'm going to ask you that question again. You can hear the airplane.
Yeah, in the background, yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad.
I don't know, it's right overhead. 3 or 4 times a week, an airplane flies overhead. There's a smaller, I suppose, like a private airport about 10 miles away. So that was actually a biplane that flew overhead. All right, so I'm going to ask you that. I'm going to ask you that question again. So you're going to build in Freetown first?
Well, we have to connect to Freetown because the sea cable is landing there, so we get the capacity from that cable from Europe.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's lots of people there, so there's lots of potential customers. That's where you build. But we want to go quite quickly to the countryside because those people out there, they might not have internet yet, or they have very bad internet. So there we make a much bigger impact. But it's always an evaluation of where do we get the most out of customers, how quick? Because if you go to the countryside, you also have an additional cost to lay a lot of fiber to get there.
Yes. Now the sea fiber, that's the cable that's coming in from, if I remember, Guinea.
Yeah, it's a cable which starts in Portugal and goes down to South Africa. And it lands in more or less every country. It lands in Dakar. It lands in Gambia. It does not land in Bissau, but it lands in Guinea, and it lands in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and then down the coast.
Down the coast. Wow, what a long cable! And then
yeah,
and then so then you'll build out the towers. Then the ISP will be available, and it's just so I can understand how it will operate. You're not necessarily going to be going out marketing to get customers. You'll be mobile phone companies will be buying bandwidth off you, or how will it work?
Okay. Well, marketing in Africa is much different compared to Europe. But when you're building an ISP, and I've done that a few times because I've started an ISP in Switzerland in '94. In the early times of the internet. And the key thing is that you get as many customers as early as possible. because those customers are going to stay with you the next 20, 30 years.
Right.
If you're going into a market where you have a lot of competitors, then you always have to have like a distinctive advantage to make people switch to you. And it's much more difficult to get a customer off a competitor than to get a new customer. So the focus is really to get new customers. And the way you do this is you provide a good service, because especially in Africa, the word of mouth propaganda is working very well, because people talk and they say, "Yeah, you have this new internet connection and it works really great." You know, with the other competitor, it just falls apart all the time. So the guy who says, "Yeah, I want to get onto the internet," he's going to choose the guys who work and who have a good price. So it's not really. The game in the early stage is not really to rip off the customers to the maximum to maximize your profit. The gain is to get your costs correctly, to minimize your cost, and then offer at a fair price, and then get as many customers as you can, and then they're going to stay with you. And because your price is not too high, the competitors who come later to the game, they're going to have a pretty tough case, because they have to invest the same amount of money you already have amortized over the years, that it's going to be difficult for them to compete. So if you are playing early in the game, get as many customers as possible, as quickly as possible, and get the profits at a later time when you have already amortized your infrastructure, and then you don't have to fear the competition.
Right.
But it's always, getting the price point correct is not always easy. And of course, we're gonna go in with a higher price in the beginning, and then it's gonna be lowered when we have to. But we have to get in with a price where people say, yeah, that's something I can afford, instead of you only get the super rich and the corporations and so on.
Right.
So the idea is really to get end users as customers and corporations as customers, and get as much capacity in terms of bandwidth together, so you can buy big pipes to Europe. Because when you're going to cable companies who lay fiber and have sea cables and so on, and that's true for even in Europe. If you get 1 gigabyte of bandwidth at the price, and you are comparing this to 10 gigabytes of bandwidth, then you're not going to pay 10 times more. You're not going to pay 7 times more. You might pay 3 times more. So, the more bandwidth you have together, the lower the price per megabit is going to be. So that's why it's important to get as much bandwidth together in the early stage.
Right.
And so if we resell to others in Sierra Leone, I don't know. In Bissau, that would be definitely an option, because we actually bring the capacity there, or at least that's our plan, because they don't have a sea cable access. And but in Sierra Leone, of course, the other companies, they can go to the cable company themselves and get capacity in the way that they want. But there might still be an option for like smaller ISPs, or some corporations who want to have private internet connections or so.
Sure. Okay. All right. And then, how long will it take roughly? And I know, and I want to say this for anybody who's watching this, is that projects are invariably always prone to delays. And the bigger the project, the greater the likelihood of delays, because there's great likelihood of variable vulnerabilities and obstacles and stuff. I mean, who would have thought that we'd have had, during the ICO, we'd have had the delay in getting the license in Guinea-Bissau that we have had, but that wasn't something that we could have predicted, or would have.
Yeah, that was not predictable, really.
So with Sierra Leone, how long?
Well, let's say it this way: if everything works perfectly fine, the funds are there, licenses are not any obstacles, and so on and so on. I would say, you can get the first customers connected in like 6 months or so. But you actually have to get a decent size of a network built that you can connect real end users. Because if you only have like a small area in a town which you serve, and people go out and in of this area, and then they lose connectivity all the time, then they're not going to be happy. So you probably want to build the whole city and then start connecting customers, because then the customer experience is much better. So it's, when we are launching, it's a question of how fast can we build that the coverage inside the city of Freetown initially is good enough that we can say, yeah, we basically cover like 90% of the city, or the most important parts where people are around that that really can use the service.
Right. And what would that, a year, 15 months, 18 months?